Clara, in my house? In my bed?
Imagine losing your husband to your own best friend. Now imagine finding out she actually did you a favor. Clara thought she had won. She thought she stole the perfect life. But she didn't know one dangerous secret. And when the truth finally came out, the entire village was left speechless. Let me tell you what really happened. Amara had always believed that betrayal was something that happened in movies, not in real life, and certainly not between best friends. She and Clara had grown up like sisters in the same neighborhood, sharing dreams beneath mango trees and whispering about the kind of men they would one day marry. Clara was bold and charming, always the center of attention, while Amara was calm, thoughtful, and quietly ambitious. When Amara met Daniel at a corporate seminar in Lagos, Clara had been her loudest cheerleader. Daniel was everything people admired: tall, confident, smooth-talking, and seemingly successful. He owned a fast-growing logistics company and drove a sleek car that made neighbors stare. Clara would tease Amara playfully, saying she had finally found her king. The wedding was grand, filled with music, elegance, and admiration. Clara stood proudly as chief bridesmaid, holding Amara's bouquet and smiling wide for every camera. But somewhere between the congratulations and honeymoon photos, subtle cracks began forming. Daniel started coming home late. His phone was always on silent. He stepped outside to take calls. Amara noticed the distance but blamed stress from business expansion. She trusted both her husband and her best friend too much to suspect anything darker. Until one evening, when she returned home earlier than usual from a business trip, her world tilted. The lights were on in the living room. Laughter echoed faintly from the bedroom, a laugh she knew too well. Her heart pounded as she walked slowly down the hallway. The door was slightly open, and in that moment, before she even pushed it fully, her spirit already knew. The silhouettes inside were unmistakable. Daniel was not alone, and the woman adjusting her hair in the mirror was not a stranger. It was Clara. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Daniel jumped back as though burned, scrambling for excuses that refused to form properly. But Clara stood still, her expression shifting from shock to something disturbingly calm. Amara did not scream, she did not faint. Instead, she felt an icy clarity settle over her. "How long?" she asked softly, her voice almost steady. Daniel avoided her eyes. Clara sighed as though inconvenienced. "It wasn't planned," she muttered, but the lack of remorse spoke louder than confession. Amara looked around her bedroom. The framed wedding photo, the curtains she had chosen, the bed she had paid for, and realized that the betrayal was not just emotional, it was invasive, it was calculated. Over the next few days, the truth unfolded in fragments. The affair had been ongoing for months. Secret meetings, hidden messages, carefully timed lies. Clara eventually moved out of her apartment and into Daniel's house, as if stepping into a role she had rehearsed for years. The village buzzed with gossip. Some pitied Amara. Others whispered that maybe she had been too focused on her career. Daniel, emboldened by Clara's presence, asked for a divorce casually, almost arrogantly, as though he were discarding something outdated. But what neither of them fully understood was this: Daniel's business success was not entirely his own. Amara had been the silent backbone from the beginning. When Daniel's startup nearly collapsed 3 years earlier, it was Amara who injected capital from her inheritance. She had registered shares quietly, trusting her husband. She owned majority control, something Daniel had conveniently forgotten and Clara had never known. While they celebrated what they believed was victory, the foundation beneath them was already cracking. Within months of Daniel and Clara officially announcing their relationship, subtle changes began to surface. Bills that were once easily settled became urgent reminders. Suppliers began demanding overdue payments. The luxury car Daniel once flaunted was suddenly in the shop for extended repairs. Clara, who had imagined a life of effortless glamour, started noticing tension in Daniel's tone. He grew irritable, defensive, short-tempered. The truth was simple. Without Amara's strategic mind and financial oversight, the company was bleeding money. Contracts were poorly negotiated. Investments were mishandled. Daniel had always relied on Amara's quiet intelligence more than he admitted. Meanwhile, Amara did not waste time drowning in heartbreak. After signing the divorce papers with composed dignity, she activated her shares legally. As majority stakeholder, she requested a formal audit of the company. The findings were damning. Funds had been misallocated. Debt had accumulated beyond control. The board, shocked by the financial instability, voted to restructure leadership. Daniel found himself gradually stripped of authority in the very empire he boasted about. Clara's excitement turned into anxiety. Arguments replaced romance. Regret crept in like an unwelcome guest. They had mistaken Amara's silence for weakness. They had confused her grace for ignorance. But while they were busy celebrating stolen affection, Amara had been quietly securing her future. As Daniel's company spiraled down, Amara launched something new. Using the knowledge and connections she had built over years, she started her own consulting firm. Unlike before, this time, her name was boldly displayed on every document, every contract, every announcement. She no longer stood behind a man's shadow. Clients who once respected her privately now approached her publicly. Her reputation for discipline and foresight attracted investors quickly. Within a year, her firm expanded beyond expectations. At industry events, her presence commanded admiration. She dressed elegantly, walked confidently, and spoke with clarity that left rooms silent. Clara watched from afar through social media updates and whispered conversations. The woman she once pitied was now thriving independently. Meanwhile, Daniel's gets deepened. The house he had moved Clara into faced foreclosure threats. The lifestyle Clara had risked her friendship for began collapsing piece by piece. The glamorous illusion she chased dissolved into unpaid invoices and tense silence at dinner tables. Reality was not as romantic as Betrayal had promised. One afternoon at a high-profile business conference, fate arranged an encounter neither Clara nor Daniel could avoid. Amara stood at the podium delivering a keynote speech on resilience and ethical leadership. Her voice was steady, her confidence radiant. Applause filled the hall. Among the audience sat Clara, invited as Daniel's reluctant +1 to seek potential investors. Their eyes met briefly. Clara looked tired, not physically broken, but emotionally drained. The sparkle she once wore proudly had dimmed into quiet regret. After the event, Clara approached Amara hesitantly. "You look happy," she said softly. Amara smiled, not mockingly, not bitterly, just peacefully. "I am." No insults, no revenge, just truth. Clara realized in that moment that she hadn't stolen a blessing. She had taken a burden disguised as gold. Daniel had depended on Amara's strength far more than he valued her presence. And now, without her, he was exposed. In the end, Amara did not need dramatic revenge. Life itself balanced the scales. Daniel eventually lost controlling rights to his company and faded from the spotlight he once craved. Clara learned that desire without discernment leads to destruction. As for Amara, she built something stronger than marriage. She built self-worth. She understood that sometimes betrayal is not meant to destroy you, but to redirect you. Years later, when people retold the story, they no longer spoke of the scandal. They spoke of Amara's strength. They spoke of how she rose without bitterness. They spoke of how losing everything led her to find herself. And somewhere in the quiet of her new office, overlooking a city skyline she had earned on her own terms, Amara smiled. Not because Clara suffered, not because Daniel failed, but because she discovered a truth few understand. Sometimes, the person who thinks they stole your happiness is only removing what was blocking your greatness. And that was the secret Clara never saw coming. Remember, not everything that looks like gold is a blessing. Sometimes, when someone steals from you, they are actually removing a problem you were too loyal to let go of. Amara didn't lose her husband. She lost a distraction. She didn't lose her best friend. She lost betrayal wearing a smile. And maybe someone watching this video right now needs to hear this. If someone walks out of your life, let them. What is meant for you will never require betrayal to stay. If this story taught you something, type lesson learned in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Moonlight Stories Africa for more powerful African stories that will keep you thinking long after the story ends. Because sometimes the real secret is not revenge, it's growth. I'll see you in the next story.